Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Ina Durante. I'm the Brand Content Manager at Carbon Maps. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting this webinar on automating supplier sustainability assessments for smarter engagement. We will be hearing from my colleagues and Solinest. So to get started, I will let our speakers briefly introduce themselves. Now everyone is here. Perhaps let's start with Ariane.
Thank you, Ina. Hello, everyone. My name is Ariane Jacoberger, and I'm the Sustainability and Social Impact Manager at Solinest, a family business based in Alsace, specializing in the distribution of premium F&B brands on the French, Belgian, and German markets.
Thank you, Ariane. Let's move on to Justine.
Hello, I'm Justine Morin. I'm Customer Success Manager at Carbon Maps. So I'm supporting our clients in the implementation of Carbon Maps platform for their teams, including suppliers, CSR maturity assessment projects.
Thanks, Justine. And finally, we have Estelle.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ina. So I'm Estelle. I'm co-founder and CEO at Carbon Maps.
All right, thank you, everyone. And perhaps, Estelle, you could give a brief introduction of Carbon Maps.
Okay. So for those who don't know us, we are a software company. We develop a sustainability platform for the food industry. We work with retailers, food service players, and brands, food brands, and we help them reduce their environmental impact. Even though we name Carbon Maps, we don't do only carbon. We track also other KPIs and help our customers reduce their impact, mainly on Scope 3. We'll go to that. It's mainly Scope 3 emission for the food industry.
All right, thank you very much. So before we get started with today's discussion, I'd like to start off with a poll for our audience today. So I'm just going to pull that up on the screen. Okay, so let's see, think of it as a small kind of icebreaker to kind of naturally flow into today's discussion. I'll start it and I will give you about maybe 20 to 30 seconds to respond, and then I'll share the results with everyone. So the question for today's poll is, how are you currently engaging your suppliers for sustainability data? Okay, so now we're seeing the numbers move. Very interesting. Okay, so perhaps this is a good time to stop the poll. And you all see the results. So 60% of you selected that it's on an ad hoc basis via manual surveys or spreadsheets. So this is actually something we hear a lot from a lot of companies. Manual processes are usually where supplier engagement starts, but they are also time-consuming and hard to scale, especially when your supplier base grows or when your clients start requesting for more transparency. So today's session will show you how automation can help you move beyond these limitations while still building on what you have already started. Thanks everyone for participating. So I'm just going to remove that from the stream. And today I'd like to share with you the agenda for the webinar. So essentially we have 4 main parts followed by a Q&A at the end. So I'd like to remind you to please submit your questions in the Q&A box so that we can easily spot them and they don't get lost in the chat. We'll do our best to answer the questions, time permitting. All right. So let's head over to part 1. And okay, so first I'll chat with Estelle. Estelle, can you contextualize for us the importance of understanding the CSR maturity of one's suppliers and how does this relate to Scope 3?
Okay, thanks, Ina. So yes, I think that's the right introduction for this topic. Why does it matter? So first, if we consider food industry, Scope 3 usually represents between 80 and 90%. And when we're talking Scope 3 in foods, then it's all the ingredients, all the ingredients being used for the product. So if you want to reduce the impact of the Scope 3, you have at some point to turn to your suppliers and get an increased visibility of your suppliers' engagement. That's the first thing. And so once you realize that you have to collect data from your suppliers and engage them, then it's important to do two things. The first one is run some quantitative assessment. That's the starting point, I'd say, to see where the hotspots lie. So once you have run that, then what is important is to balance this quantitative assessment with some qualitative data. And that's what we'll be talking about today, how to collect data and use this data to run a qualitative assessment and balance this with the quantitative. Why is it important? It's because once you know where the hotspots lie, to reduce this emission, you have to understand the practices of your suppliers and also where they stand in terms of maturity. If I'm taking a concrete example, for instance, I don't know, if you manufacture pastries, let's say very French, then you have butter and cocoa in this product.
Okay.
I mean, these two ingredients are very impactful, so we know emissions are very high. So if you want to start building an action plan to reduce, you have to get more data from your suppliers to understand their practices and start differentiating this supplier between them, looking at their practices, and also build different action plan depending on their starting point. There can be significant gaps depending on the region of sourcing and their practices. So these are, I'd say, the two main points on how and why it matters.
Thanks, Estelle. So I think this is also why we've found that having both quantitative and qualitative KPIs to be sort of in the same place to be super useful for building one's reduction strategy as well as tracking one's trajectory. For example, on the Carbon Maps dashboard, we can see both the quantitative and the qualitative KPIs. Okay, let me now ask Ariane a question. Thanks, Estelle. Okay, so Ariane, I understand that Solinest has carried out its carbon footprints assessment. Do any of the things that Estelle explained resonate with you? Or what made you decide to consider assessing CSR maturity of your suppliers? But maybe before I let you answer, could you introduce Solinest to us, please?
Thank you, Ina. So as I said in the introduction, Solinest is a family business. We're based in Alsace, and we have three different types of activities. Our first activity is that we distribute partner brands on the French and Belgian markets. So you can see here some of our partner brands. Some of them we've been working with for over 50 years. So we are in different categories: the confectionery, chocolate, chilled beverages, and also now frozen foods. So that's the first activity. The second activity is that we've developed our own brands. So we try to provide for healthier or more innovative alternatives to products that already exist on the market. And the third activity is that we also partner with industrial partners to create products like for private labels for our clients. We are on these three different distribution channels, so large retailers, local stores, but we are also on impulse and new markets. So we started our sustainability journey a few years back, so 2 years ago now. And as Estelle said, like the first step of our sustainability journey has been to do our carbon footprint assessment. And there, as you can see, we expected it to be a large part for Scope 3 emissions, but it was actually an enormous part. It was 99.2% of our emissions that are related to our Scope 3. So we're almost fully dependent on our suppliers and other external partners to reduce our impact on the environment. So we did our carbon footprint assessment because before that we had absolutely no objective data regarding our environmental impact. And so now having that information, it's allowed us to understand that supplier engagement is a key element in every aspect of our sustainability strategy. So we also did our our dual materiality analysis, which is how we came up with these 4 pillars that you can see on the screen. And so supply engagement is key for our brands portfolio pillar, and also for our logistical processes and our products consumers. So supply engagement is like really at the center stage of our CSR strategy.
Thanks for your introduction, Ariane. And yeah, I like that you touched on those points, which we'll be elaborating as we go further into the webinar. But perhaps we can now jump onto the next part. Okay, so here we're on part 2. I think so that we can get a better understanding of the key benefits to creating a structured, automated process. We first need to understand, what are the challenges? We found there was a study from Bain & Co. Where they found that sustainability teams spend an average of about 70% of their time gathering data. And this is time that could otherwise be spent on actions to drive environmental impact. In addition, most companies really do believe that getting primary data is a barrier to even setting realistic targets, because so very few suppliers are able to provide product level sustainability data. So I'll come back to you again, Ariane. What do you think of these statistics? Did you spend a significant amount of time collecting or organizing data? And maybe one more question. What do you find to be the biggest challenges when it comes to engaging your own suppliers?
So like the majority of the participants to this call today, I think before we started working with carbon maps, we had no systematic assessment of our suppliers' engagement. So we used to do ad hoc. We used to send ad hoc emails basically, but only when one of our clients used to ask us. So that was extremely challenging in many respects. So the contacts were not readily available, so we didn't even know who to reach out to. We had major delays. We had no internal focal points. And also from a strategic perspective for ourselves, we had no global or comprehensive vision of our suppliers' performance. And also another aspect of not being organized in that way is also that you have no record of what your suppliers do, which is very challenging because our clients used to come back to us like all the time asking the same questions. So we couldn't respond to our clients in a timely manner. It was very time consuming to try to find the right person to reach out to. And it was also very stressful for our team. So, I mean, obviously we were quite far from having a basis to start a collaboration with our suppliers, and also we didn't have any form of like common sustainability strategy. Everyone was working a little bit on their own, which wasn't very efficient. So it was time consuming. It wasn't an efficient way of working, and also I think that what's important and interesting is that because we're a distributor, we also have to respond to a lot of assessments, a lot of questions from our clients, which often come in the form of a Google form or an Excel spreadsheet. And that had like, we spend a lot of time responding to them, and there's absolutely no added value for us. Whereas when there's an I don't want to spoil the rest of the webinar, but when there's an automated system, obviously it brings both parties an advantage.
Okay, yeah, that's super interesting. Thanks for bringing it up. And, it's not a spoiler. Don't worry about it. Maybe just so the audience get a better sense of the workload that you had prior to getting on Carbon Maps. Did you work alongside a few people to respond to ad hoc requests by clients?
So we worked. That was a challenge as well. It was the different people in our team had different sort of information. So there was always a back and forth as well. We would just like send the Excel spreadsheet back and forth between different teams. So I would say, yes, there were many people it wasn't centralized. The information wasn't centralized at all.
I see. All right. Thanks so much, Ariane. I'm going to now ask Estelle a couple of questions about this one. Hi, Estelle. So I know you've had several conversations and, a number of workshops with CSR and sustainability teams. Aside from the challenges that were mentioned by Ariane, are there others that have come up repeatedly in your opinion or in your experience?
Yeah, I've been hearing. I think I've been hearing two things a lot. The first people I'd say would be that when we start collecting data from this supplier, we want to get the full picture. So we want to have like every supplier's answer to the questionnaire, and where, as we were saying at the beginning, sometimes 80% of your impact is being made by the top 10, 20, or top 50 suppliers of your portfolio. So my recommendation on that for this first challenge would be to start somewhere. I mean, you have to start somewhere. It's usually what we're saying to our customers. Start somewhere and add pixels along the way to the picture. As you're showing here, again, it's sometimes only the top suppliers that you need to survey first, and then you can go to the smaller one afterwards. So that's the first challenge, I think. And then the second one is I've seen lots of CSR managers, so they run the campaign through Excel spreadsheet or any online form, and then so they collected the data. And then they didn't know what to do with it because it's very overwhelming once you have all this data. So they had both qualitative and quantitative, like in an Excel spreadsheet for all the suppliers. And once you have that, then you need to find a way to translate these inputs into action plan. So it's a little bit like the first point, but focus on what's the biggest priority, collect this data, be super pragmatic on what you need and don't need, and then you need to find a way to translate this into actionable insights. That's the biggest challenge, I'd say. So data collection and then action plan, how to turn this into an action plan. And probably we'll discuss that later on into the webinar. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Estelle. Actually, it also really reminds me of the key word for supplier sustainability assessments, which is all about prioritization, I think, right? Because it's super hard to get through all of your suppliers. For example, if you're a retailer, it could be in the hundreds. I think, prioritization is really key. And thanks so much for explaining that one. Oh, actually, this reminds me of one of the white papers that we recently published. It looks into the challenges between CSR and procurement managers on engaging their suppliers and the solutions that can be explored. So if anyone in the audience is interested in reading that, we will share a download link in the chat. Someone from the team will share the link. Okay. So now let's move on to the third part, unlocking time savings and insights with automation. And also we'll look more deeply into Solinest's experience of doing this. So let me bring my colleague Justine in. Hi, Justine. All right, so I know that you have worked hand in hand with Solinest on automating their supplier assessment. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what Estelle mentioned earlier about, complementing qualitative and quantitative data?
Yes, sure. So maybe to better illustrate this, let me break it down into two things. So first of all, the most common situation we encounter when we carry out LCAs is that the companies either do not have or have very little supplier data. resulting in the usage of national averages as emission factors. And this is especially the case when it's the first time for the company carrying out the LCA, which is very okay because it gives the company a first overview of the carbon footprint, the LCA, and also allows the companies to maybe make a focus on the most impacting areas. But it also means that it's nearly impossible for the companies to differentiate two suppliers that are providing them with the exact same product. So it's really key to have qualitative data in addition to quantitative data so that you can engage in more actionable discussions with your suppliers. But actually, I would say that it also goes both ways because having such qualitative data allows you to refine your LCAs and PCFs. So, for example, it's a good way to identify what are the suppliers that have maybe performed LCAs on their side, so have more granular qualitative data that you can include in your LCA for the products they are providing you with. And it's also maybe a first step for you to ask a question about their practices and so on. So, for example, for dairy suppliers, are they engage into regenerative agriculture? Are they implementing methane reduction strategies and so on? And this kind of information can also be taken into account for more LCA.
Okay, so to summarize, it's having qualitative data helps refine your quantitative data as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, Justine, I think our audience would also benefit from getting ideas for the types of questions that they should be asking their suppliers.
Yes, sure. So maybe before that, what's important to note when you perform CSR maturity assessment is to make sure you ask targeted question that not only reveal the current sustainability performance of your suppliers, but also their level of commitment, their ambitions, their targets, etc. But maybe more specific examples of topics you can make a focus on in your questionnaires. So there is, for example, the governance. So how is the governance handled in the company? Is it a specific team that will focus on these topics, etc., or is this a topic that is managed by several teams at the same time? It's also important to make a focus on carbon and other environmental indicators. So what about the last carbon footprint assessment? When was it performed? What were the emission factors that were used? What type of emission factors? Also related to that, questions about the reduction action plan. So what are the targets? What's the time frame of this action plan? What are the actions that have already been put in place or will be put in place in a near or more long-term futures? Also, you know that CSR performance is not only about carbon, so you can make a focus on social and societal impact, including questions about the working conditions, policies, the human rights, etc. And do they have implemented a code of conduct? And so on. And finally, I would say maybe make a focus on the communication. That means how does the company, the supplier, communicate internally and externally on their CSR initiatives.
Okay, thank you very much. So as you can see in the slide, so we have summarized these 5 different key points. These are different categories for the sorts of questions that you should be asking your suppliers when you decide to carry out a systematic or structured supplier maturity assessment. And if you're interested in getting concrete ideas for the specific questions that you should be asking, so actually with Justine leading up to this webinar, we worked together on preparing a short document that explains more the benefits of asking these questions, as well as giving concrete examples for the types of questions you should be asking. So we'll share a link to the free guide towards the end of the webinar, which you can access for free. And in case you missed the link, we'll also share it in our website this afternoon. Okay, thanks very much, Justine. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's
All right, wonderful. I have a new question for Estelle. Okay, so Estelle, perhaps, you know, a lot of people in the audience, they're very curious about what we mean when we say automation of supplier assessments. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sure. So it can mean many things. The first one is, I'd say, automating the data collection in order to have the best experience for the supplier. Ariane mentioned it at the beginning. It's very tiring because they are receiving lots of questionnaire. Each questionnaire is a bit different, but they are common questions. So they have to fill in questionnaire with the same inputs again and again and again. So we have worked on carbon maps on automating this data collection. It means several things. The first one is you have an online questionnaire. So you can go somewhere, you log in, you create an account as a supplier, and you can come back to this questionnaire if you want. You can start filling it in and come back, decide to validate it later. So the experience is better than having to manage an Excel spreadsheet, send it by email. That's the first. And then the second thing is automate also, help them filling the questionnaire in. So for instance, like collecting, what we do on Carbon Maps is that we can collect some data on the web if they already made some communication about their carbon assessment, for instance, of their CSR report. We can pre-collect this data and start filling it in the questionnaire for them so that they take time. And maybe the last thing is also use our tech to adapt the questionnaire to the supplier. Because again, when you receive an Excel spreadsheet and you have, 50 questions and you have to go through all of them, sometimes some of them are not relevant because your industry or the ingredient that you're working on are a bit different from the other suppliers, or your size is not relevant for this question or this question. So what we are doing on Carbon Map side is that we have also some scripts that adapt to the supplier category. And that's very important too, because maybe a small supplier that have only one ingredient, that is mono ingredient, needs to answer only 5 questions, and then that's it. We have the data that we need. As we were saying at the beginning, focus on what we need and not try to spend time collecting data that won't be used afterwards. So the first thing we can automate, again, is data collection. And then once we have this data, we automate also the scoring. So as we were saying, what we do on Carbon Maps, that we score on the quantitative aspect and qualitative aspect. So as soon as we have this data, we have a scoring system that is able to allocate a CSR maturity score to the supplier. And if we collected quantitative data, we can also use that to feed the quantitative assessment of the supplier's product. So basically the LCA score of the product. That's the thing. And then having all this data, we're able to make converge all these assessments so that you have side by side the qualitative assessment and the quantitative assessments, because again, look at both of them to make a decision. It's very important to balance the first one with the other one. And maybe the last thing that is very convenient, having all this online questionnaire, is you have real-time updates and data history. These things are very important, as Ariane was mentioning it also, I think, earlier. It's good to collect data. Collect these data points once for 1 year. But the interesting thing is to be able to track the progress between 1 year and the other one. So you want data history and you want also real-time updates. because maybe along the way, I mean, during the year, the supplier might have changed either practices or its governance around CSR maturity and so on. So we want them to be able to push this data when it's available.
I see. Thanks so much for breaking that down one by one for us, Estelle. So essentially, on the slide that we're sharing, it's a summary of the powers of automation that Estelle mentioned. You can streamline the collection and organization of data. You get real-time updates from when, how many suppliers have responded, how many haven't yet, and so much more. And then you also have an automated scoring system that will rate your suppliers based on the questions that you've asked them. Okay, thanks, Estelle. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe one last thing is, last word on this one is having this automation help you focus on what really matters. You don't want to spend time dealing with Excel spreadsheet, managing this data. You want to focus on building this action plan and also engage with your suppliers. So what we're trying to do here is really save time so that you can use this time to work on what really matters.
Yes, that's solid advice. Thanks, Estelle. Now I want to bring back Ariane to ask her a few questions. All right. Hi, Ariane.
Hi.
So maybe we can move on to, discussing your experience. So was it for you sort of like an off-the-shelf experience, or were you able to do some customization for your supplier questionnaires?
So we were able to customize the questionnaires in two ways. So firstly, we were able to create different questionnaires for different stakeholders. So we had one questionnaire for our suppliers and one for our logistical partners, because obviously it wasn't exactly the same questions that we wanted to ask them, and it allowed us to go deeper into some specific issues or initiatives for different stakeholders. And the second thing is that for the suppliers questionnaires, we were able to match the questions in our assessment to the ones in the questionnaires that we received from our clients. So not all our clients have the same priorities. So customizing the responses allowed us to identify the suppliers whose initiatives we could highlight to our clients. So it was even an added value in addition to the assessment for us.
Very good. I have another question. Did you find that there was a gap between your quantitative impact data, so LCA or product carbon footprint results, with the qualitative supplier maturity assessments? And how have these insights influenced your approach to Scope 3 management in a way or in any way?
Okay, thank you, Ina. So it was the first time that we sent a questionnaire like that. So we had around 50% of respondents, which is not bad for a first round, but obviously it's like a first insight into our suppliers' initiatives. So there was no uniformity at all. For some of our suppliers, sustainability is at the core of their business model. So obviously they were very used to responding to these types of questions, and so they had a very, very high score. Others are only starting to formalize their strategy. So it was maybe sometimes even more difficult to get the answers from them. I think it's also I'll get back to it later, but I think it's also important to keep in mind that results will vary depending on the size of the company which is being assessed. Because obviously smaller teams might not have the means to formalize their initiatives as much as bigger companies. And so to respond to your second question, having an easy access and also a global overview of our suppliers' maturity It has allowed us many things, actually. It's allowed us to identify the most mature ones within our global portfolio, but also within specific categories. It's allowed us to identify common priorities, as I said before, and start working together on specific initiatives. So, for instance, with one of our suppliers that's very advanced, we're focusing now on reducing transport emissions. And that's also something that we're now exploring, working together with the clients. So it would be like an agreement with a client, a supplier, and us, which would be super efficient. It's also allowed us to put forward some of our partners and their initiatives with our clients. So, for instance, one of our new brands, which is a very innovative one, will feature at a retailer's fair, despite us not having a commercial agreement on these products with them. So it's creating a bridge between the commercial discussions and the sustainability discussion, and it's helped us create brand awareness. So it's helped us do a lot of things. And so in short, basically, it's provided us with a clear understanding of our partners' CSR maturity, and so it's allowed us to really build that strategy.
Oh, thanks so much for sharing such concrete examples, Ariane. I'm sure people in the audience really benefit that, because sometimes we discuss things in theory, but then it's hard to put yourself in someone's shoes and really kind of identify, what concretely do I get out of this? So those are fantastic examples. I have another question for you, and perhaps a lot of people in the audience have the same question. How did you approach getting supplier buy-in for participating in this supplier assessment?
So as I said before, most of our suppliers are really used to filling forms and Excels. So actually having an automated assessment process, I think, was quite a welcome change, and it's allowed us to also have that vision. So I think it wasn't that hard to convince them. Also because we explained to them that it's not only part of the information that we are required to provide our clients. It's also, as illustrated by the examples I gave before, it's also an opportunity to shed light on the initiatives that they've undertaken, and even now differentiate themselves from competitors.
All right. And maybe just to kind of tie up everything that you've said, from a strategic standpoint, how does having this supplier scoring or rating system help you align with Solinest's broader sustainability objectives?
So I'm not going to repeat what I said before, because obviously that's part of our strategy. But I'd say that the rating system is like a map to us, and so now we can focus on working with the most involved suppliers. As I said, to create a commercial competitive advantage, but also it's now a very, very strong argument for the ones that are not as advanced to bring them in. So it's really made our role as a distributor evolve. It adds another dimension to what we've always done. We've been having the same job and the same expertise, and now it's allowed us to add an additional expertise to our offer for our suppliers. So it's really become an integral part of our strategy.
Fantastic! Thanks so much for sharing that. Now we can go to the final part of our webinar. Thanks, Ariane. I'll bring Justine back. Can you tell us more, what would be your top advice for CSR or sustainability teams who are considering doing or carrying out their supplier assessments?
Yes, sure. So maybe first thing is to start with a clear objective. You before doing any assessment, you need to know what you want to achieve. For example, do you want to identify high-risk suppliers? Do you want to increase their level of commitment? Do you want to set benchmark for future improvements, etc.? So having a clear goal in mind, first of all, will help you to structure your assessment. For example, knowing what questions you want to include into the questionnaire, but also in the end, it will provide you with actionable insights rather than collecting data just for the sake of it. So this is a really important point. The second point, and we've already mentioned it, but keep it simple and supplier friendly. So we said that companies are receiving more and more questionnaires. So if you if the assessment is too long, is too complex, it might lead to a low response rate. So start with a well-structured, and concise questionnaire that focuses on the main topic you want to assess the maturity of your supplier on. And also, we've noticed that providing it in multiple languages and offering them an how-to way to fill it in also improve the participation. And also something we've also mentioned is to avoid the single-use data. We've noticed that sometimes the data is only used internally, which turns the assessment into a one-time compliance exercise. Rather than doing that, make sure that this data, this result is also valuable for the suppliers. For example, at Carbon Maps, we allow the suppliers to have access to their scores and to benchmark themselves against the other suppliers of the company, of their kind.
Thanks so much for those tips, practical tips, Justine. Let me bring back Estelle and Ariane in case, Estelle, do you have other tips that you would like to share with the audience today?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Okay.
So I just add, start somewhere, make it actionable, go beyond the beauty contest. And also maybe one last thing that might not be here is see this as a long-term partnership with your supplier. It's not a one-time thing. It's not a one-time compliance check. It's a partnership within time. So it's in the long run. What we're trying to do here is in the long run.
Yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint. How about you, Ariane? Do you have any other practical tips that perhaps we didn't get a chance to mention earlier?
No, I would just say to continue what Estelle just said. I would just say that yes, looking at both quantitative and qualitative data, at least for us, for Solinest, it's really allowed us to create like a new type of dialogue with our stakeholders, whether it's clients or partners, and it's really a way to bring our sustainability strategy to the next level. So I can only encourage everyone to do them.
Fantastic. Okay, maybe now, I know we're a little bit over time, but if you have 2 more minutes, we can go through a couple of questions sent in the chat. Maybe let's look at this one from Louis. Okay, I'll just flash it there. What is the average response rate from suppliers that you've seen from the projects you've carried out? I'll let Justine or Estelle answer this question.
Go ahead, Justine. I think I take the next one on the rating.
Okay. Okay. So it really depends on the project, but let's say it's around 50%, between 40 and 60, let's say. But the most important thing is to know that the more your questionnaire is complex and long to answer, the less the suppliers will answer to it. So really keep it simple. Make sure that it's clear for them why you are doing that. You're not policing them. You just want to collect data, offer them a how-to, guide them. Also on Carbon Maps, we've noted that chasing them a bit can be helpful. So do not hesitate to call them, to send them email, to remind them to just fill in the questionnaire. It's really important. But with all the automation and the tools we provide, we noticed around 50% rate.
All right, thanks very much, Justine. We got another question from Irene in the chat. Let me just flash that, and I can read it out loud as well. Thank you for the webinar. Very clear on how it makes it easier for companies to gather data on the side of suppliers and on the automated scoring system. How do you ensure that the suppliers understand their rating?
I can take this one if you want, Ina.
Okay, thanks.
So, two things. The rating system can be customized for each of our customers. So we usually don't share the rating system and the weights of each question. But what we share with the supplier is a benchmark so that they can benchmark their score within their category and on the whole supplier core. That's very important so that they can see where they stand. But then sharing the rating is more on the customer side, our customer side. If they are comfortable with that, we can definitely do it. I think we haven't mentioned that, but on the tool we have lots of data, privacy options. So for the supplier to decide what he wants to share to the customer and for our customer to decide what he wants to share back to the supplier. So that could be definitely shared if the customer is okay with that.
All right, thanks for that, Estelle. I wonder if that also touches on this new question we got once again from Louis. Okay, let me just flash that. How do you ensure that the supplier's data that is collected is safe?
Yeah, that's definitely the same topic. So what we have on our side is for each type of data that the supplier will input in the questionnaire, he can choose whether he wants to share or not this data. So we have privacy option for that. We already had project where the supplier was okay to share like very detailed, granular things for us to run a quantitative score on their product. They did not want their customer to see the detail. They want the customer to have only the final score. That's something we can do. And same on some qualitative answers. So that's our way of managing things.
All right, thank you. So thanks once again to everyone in the audience for your patience. Sorry, we ran a little bit over time, but if you have any other questions, feel free to send us a message, hello@carbonmaps.io. And then we will be sharing a recording of this webinar as well with French subtitles for those of you who'd like to follow as well with subtitles. So thanks again for your time, and we hope to see you in the next webinar.